Hi and welcome back to Hooked by Heather. Today we're going to make a stress ball blob using these fun little stress balls I found on Amazon. I'll put a link to them in the description below. They're really fun to play with. They're kind of addicting. So I made a little mini one and I used smaller stress balls for those. Kind of like Orbeez in there. But the safety eyes, you want to be careful with eyes because they can poke the ball. And then I'll show you the big one that I completed, which is kind of just a rough outline of what I was looking to achieve. And then this makes a really big blob. But they're really squishy and fun. I made some for the neighbors' kids, and I'm going to be gifting that to them, little early Halloween present. So you're going to need a 9mm hook, a pair of scissors, a stress blob. That's what I call them anyway. Needles, yarn, polyfill, which is not pictured here, and a stitch marker because thick yarn can be tricky to work with. So we're going to start as soon as I can get my yarn untangled here. It's a bit of a blob, quite fitting for the project that I'm about to start. Find my end, and we're going to start with a magic ring. If you don't know how to make a magic ring, I'll walk you through it real quick here. So you place the tail on the back or in the palm side of your hand, wrap the yarn around those first two fingers and create an X like that. Then bring your working yarn forward and pinch it with your thumb and your ring finger. Then take your hook, go under the first loop, over the second loop, draw it through and twist, and then grab that area with your thumb and release your fingers. Then take your working yarn and chain one as you're holding on to the tail. And that chain does not count as a stitch. And you want to flip your ring so that the tail is on the top before you start making your stitches. So we're actually going to start with 6 single crochet into the magic ring. You have to bear with me. Working with chunky yarn can be a bit of a trick. If you're not used to it, it will take time and it will take patience, because it's harder to pull on with the hook and it's also harder to see your stitches. But once you get used to working with chunky yarn, you'll love it. It works up really quick with projects and makes great beanies and all sorts of things. Blankets. So there's 6, and now we're going to take that tail and we're going to cinch it tight, but you don't want to pull so hard that you rip it off. Just hard enough to where you close up that hole. And you can always weave it in case you're afraid it's going to come undone. So now we're going to make our first single crochet in that very first stitch, which can be a little tricky sometimes because it gets kind of tight when you tighten up that ring. Mark your first stitch, and we're going to do 2 single crochets into each stitch, so that's 2 now, and we should have a total of 12 stitches when we're done. So that was 3, this is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So now you should have 12 stitches around, and we're going to increase again with one increase or one single crochet followed by an increase. So that's one single crochet, followed by 2 in the next stitch. And we're going to do this 6 times total. So you should have 18 stitches all the way around once you're done. Need to move stuff off my pillow there because it just falls into my lap. So there's the last increase here. Now we are going to count our stitches, make sure we have 18, and we do, and we're going to do 2 rounds of 18 stitches. And that's row 4 and 5, just in case you're not sure what row we're on. So this is row 4, 18 stitches around, followed by row 5, which is 18 stitches around. That was 1 row down, so row 4, and this is row 5. 18 single crochet all the way around. And these are nice because they work up pretty fast. So you can make several of them in a short period of time. And they do make great gifts. People find them quite amusing. I'll actually have several of them posted on my Etsy shop, which is hookedbyheathershop.etsy.com if you're interested in checking out any of the other items that I've crocheted. But I'd really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. So it's taking shape here, and now we're going to make the little hole. So we're going to chain 2, and we're going to skip the stitch our stitch marker is in and single crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to do 16 more single crochets. So we'll have a total of 17 plus the chain, which is 18. So around and around we go again. And I've discovered a knot in my yarn. So I just pull it so that it stays to the inside. if you watched my first video of the yip yips, I was off camera quite a bit. I think I did a little bit better this time. So this is our last stitch. Now in the next round, we're going to decrease in that chain we created and then do 17 more single crochets. So we're going to pull up the loop, and I struggled a little bit with this decrease. For some reason, I could not get my yarn to go through that second hoop or loop. It was just not wanting to budge. I was all like, great, I'll do it again. Sometimes with this chunky yarn, you really gotta guide your yarn where it needs to go. And eventually I got it, but it wasn't easy. I had to cheat. Now we're going to make 17 single crochets in all the remaining stitches. I didn't realize until I started recording how much I move my hands when I crochet, and I admire these other crocheters who make these videos when their hands are so smoothly moving through the video, and here I am. It's amusing how much my hands move. But it is what it is, folks. So now we're going to remove the stitch marker because we're going to need it. But we're going to do one single crochet followed by one decrease 6 times all the way around to reduce our stitches to 12, because we're still working in 18 stitches. So mark that first stitch. And decrease. And it's hard for me to stay on camera because when I decrease, I notice I pull my project much closer in so I can see what I'm doing. And sometimes you gotta help the yarn onto the hook how it should be, because I don't want to pick up both loops. I just want the front loops for an invisible decrease. This is the last decrease. Then we can start stuffing our stress ball blob. That's the little hole that we made. That's where the little blob is going to poke out of. This is where I realized my polyfill was nowhere near, so I had to get up and get it. But I like to use like a more luxurious polyfill. It's so much softer and easy to work with. And it's like a little puffy cloud. So we're going to take all this polyfill. We're probably not going to use all of this, but I really should have put my little stress ball in first, because I end up taking all of this polyfill back out because I didn't like the way it was seated inside the stress ball. So you want to put it in where the hole is, which I'm completely off camera, but you put it into the stress ball so that when you squeeze it, it comes out that little hole. But you don't want polyfill coming out that little hole, so you just kind of do it around, and then you can put a little bit on top. But I got way too much polyfill in there, and it wasn't to my liking. Because you want it to be firm. You don't want your stress ball to wear down. And if you use less polyfill, it'll start to just be kind of a flimsy little stress ball over time after playing with it so much, because the fibers break down. And you'll notice that in amigurumi, things get kind of flat or way more squishy than you wanted them to be. It's because they're not stuffed properly to begin with. So I realized that the blob was sitting too high. And so here I go, I'm going to pull it all out. I thought I got it, but nope. And there was polyfill in the front, which I didn't want any polyfill showing. But this is why we're here, right? To live and learn what not to do on camera. So let's try this again. So I have my finger holding the blob up against the hole where I want it to come out of. But I want to firmly press this polyfill around the blob, and I want my polyfill to cooperate. As you can see, I slammed it down there. Got stuck on my ring. The more luxurious this stuff is, the more fluffy it is, and it gets everywhere. So I think I'm content with how it is now, and we'll just put some more in when we're ready to close up the hole. So now what we need to do is we have 12 stitches around. We need to decrease down to 6 stitches. So we're going to do 1 decrease in every 2 stitches. So 6 decreases in total. So let's see how off camera I am. So I'm just doing decreases if you're not sure. You'll do 6 decreases. You'll pick up a loop in the first stitch, you'll pick up a loop in the second stitch, you'll yarn over, bring it through both of those loops, and then single crochet. And if you notice, it can get a little tricky to do these decreases. Just be patient and work with the yarn. Don't let it work against you. But try to stretch them out a little bit. It makes it a lot easier to get your hook in. As you can see, I pull up into the right. That's when I'm stretching out the loop. And you can always make these in a different gauge of yarn. It's your preference. You just need to size up the stress ball You might have to order some little mini stress balls. So now we're done. We're going to go into the very first stitch and slip stitch. Pull our yarn through. So I'm going to cut off just enough to close it up. Pull it through, pull it tight. And now we're going to thread our needle onto our yarn after we put a little bit more stuffing inside. Sometimes it's easier to top it off when the hole is more closed up than when it's not, because then it can't poof back out at you. But it's good. So now, as I said, we'll thread our yarn. And you want to go through the front loop of all 6 stitches that you just created and just pull them tight as you go, or snug I should say. And at the very last one, the 6th one, that's when you're gonna pull a little tighter, and it should cinch that hole right up. There you go. So now we need to weave in our end and kind of make this less bulgy. But be careful when you're weaving in your end, because there is that little rubber stress ball and you do not want to poke it with a needle and pop it. It could be messy. But you just want to weave it in enough to where you're confident that it's not going to unravel. I tend to overdo it, but I'd rather do it and not worry that it's going to unravel. So snip your yarn and you're done. Now you just gotta clean up your mess. Find the hole. There it is. But it's nice and squishy with the polyfill and that stress ball. And that's it. There's a stress blob ball. Thanks for watching. I hope you like and subscribe. Take care. As always, bye.